Welcome to AI FiSec Today, the first and only podcast dedicated to uncovering how AI is transforming the physical security industry. I'm your host, Don Marone, and today we're going to cover a topic that will raise your awareness as a physical security professional around smart buildings and AI. And of course, we have a very special guest that is an expert in this area. Meet Dhruv Shivakumar, a visionary tech leader in the real estate and data technology sectors, is the CEO and co-founder of Cohesion. With over 20 years of experience in real estate, finance, strategy, and operations, she's pioneered the transformation of buildings and the built environment into intelligent, connected spaces through Cohesion's innovative software platform. Her leadership focuses on strategic vision alignment, operational execution, and delivering shareholder value, steering the company toward redefining human experiences in built spaces. Dhruv's commitment to innovation is also evident in her role as a founding member of Current, a water treatment accelerator, and a position on technology advisory boards like the Green Buildings Initiative. She's also a proud alumni of the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, where she earned her MBA, focusing on real estate, innovation, and finance. Her contributions to technology, business, and community have earned her widespread recognition, including Crain's Chicago 40 Under 40 List 2021, Crain's Notable Women in Stern 2023, and Crain's 2024 Notable Sustainability Leaders of 2024. Dhruv is the real deal when it comes to smart buildings and AI, and I couldn't be more excited to have her as a guest, and you're going to learn why. Hey, Dhruv, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Don. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited for the topic that we have today around smart buildings and AI. Being in the industry for 12, 13 years now, that is right up the conversation alley that everyone would have some value in. So I'd love to, while I had the intro that had a brief bit of your background, I'd love for you to tell the audience maybe just a high level of your experience, because I know you've come with a different perspective than just like a traditional security practitioner. And I think that's really valuable when we think about the types of customers that you serve, but also kind of preparing the audience for the discussion that we're going to have today. So, say as much or as little as you want, but whatever your highlight reel is, we'd love to hear that right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I am not a traditional security person from the industry, but, I've come from a real estate background and a finance and strategy background. So my thought is always rooted in return on investment and how people make the right decisions for the different audiences that they serve and the different stakeholders. And that's very broad. So let me kind of talk about, my background a little bit. I've spent a lot of years, almost 20, not to date myself, in the real estate world on the asset management side and portfolio management. I was at Hyatt Hotels, and then I went to a parking real estate company, and then I went on to the real estate private equity fund side and did acquisitions BD. And my last stint in real estate before I started the company was really with a city's economic development council, working on large scale real estate and infrastructure deals. And all of those experiences showed the importance of technology. And what I've always thought is the lack of data on the operational side. There's tons of data on the financial side, but lack of data on truly making operations efficient. And that's what I'm most excited about as it relates to AI, is the ability to synthesize vast amounts of data around the operation of a building and or a space. And I think that that's what is most exciting. And security is it's the underpinning of how people use spaces, and it's what protects people. And there's a lot of data behind it. So my background, around asset management it kind of encompasses the opportunity, but also my thought around how you look at investments in the right way around security.
Yeah. I mean, I love that experience because it sets up really what, in my experience, is being an enterprise seller that gets customers to move fast and to make big decisions when they think about things like return on investment. They think about making use of data in a meaningful way. And then, hey, by the way, it also helps with security. And so that's a huge bonus, and something that I think I'd love to see that more founders start off thinking that way, because it's in that operational efficiency that allows these end users, that's the language they talk. They don't talk security. That it would make it easier to transact and easier to build relationships.
Absolutely.
So let's start off with the first part of the segment. We're going to talk about the evolution of smart buildings and AI. And I want to talk about going from traditional to smart. And so, in your opinion, how have buildings evolved from more traditional structures to fully integrated smart environments? And what key role has AI played in this transformation?
Well, I think we're still at the very, very early stages of AI transformation in buildings. So I'll start with that. But let me start with, I guess, the traditional to smart building path. I think we're still very, very much still in the beginning stages of smart building deployments. But when we think about smart buildings there's not like an end state of a smart building. There's all sorts of varying degrees to a smart building. So if we dumb it down to smart homes, a person with like a smart speaker can call themselves a smart home. Somebody could have lighting, somebody could have full automated controls, knowing when you're pulling into your garage or knowing exactly your patterns, watch your traffic patterns, watch your car come into the garage, open the garage, light up your place, heat and cool your place the way that you would want, and play soothing music and kind of anticipate your comfort needs and your entertainment needs. That could be, that's a full gamut smart home. And then obviously energy efficiency, right? How do we make it so that you're comforted in the most efficient way for both the systems, utilities, and the human aspect of how they want to enjoy their home and their space? Now, if you translate that to the commercial side of buildings, whether it's office, industrial, retail, even multifamily, we've got a very different ecosystem there. It's not, we've got devices that are connected to massive systems, you've got security risks, you've got, a whole slew of things that you've got to consider. And so when I talk to my clients about how we think about smart buildings, we we tell them to start small. Like what are the small things that you could do that you can, if you're worried about adoption, if you're worried about change management, if you're worried about cost of the installation of any of these capex opex on smart devices, you've really got to start with what are your goals, what are you trying to achieve, right? Don't be smart just to be smart. I think everyone should be smart, but that's my personal opinion there.
Not
What are
everybody could have gone to Northwestern, by the way.
Well, it's great. It's an amazing school. I love my time there and I love my network from there. So
Yeah.
kudos to them. When I think about, where to start with the smart building, it's really thinking about the goals, right? Do you want to make it more secure? Are you trying to save money? Are you trying to get more data? Are you trying to be more efficient from an energy perspective, a labor perspective? What are those goals? And we can put a smart building kind of journey, a plan together to really take the client through that. So when I see, to answer your question, where are we at in the trajectory from traditional to smart? I think if this is the trajectory and this is the start and this is the end, I think we're like right there. I don't think we're very far. And I think there's a lot more that we can do. And more so than the technology being available, I think it's a cultural mind shift that has to happen in the industry. But everything from smart looking at the gamut of what smart means inside of buildings, we're talking about like security and fire and alarms, and we're talking about elevators, we're talking about movement and people flow, we're talking about energy, heating and cooling, you're talking about people optimization, we're talking about workplace experience, we're kind of looking at everything, even parking and transportation. There's so many aspects and it could be overwhelming. And so I always advise everyone to start small and start to think about what are those use cases that you want to achieve? What are the goals that you want to hit? And how do you put a plan in place to get there?
It's interesting that you mentioned start small, because I feel like as a seller too, that a lot of customers want to start big. I think naturally we want to solve big problems so we have meaning, and we leverage that to get our next promotion or have that as a part of our resume. We want to do big things, and maybe most without having to risk parts of their employment. But fundamentally with these kinds of things, it's almost like a building block. It's like, hey, great, I see the vision, but let's take it in strides so that like you said, it's a journey. It's not something we're going to try to come out and solve all at once, but to prepare yourself. And that's what I've seen with AI in companies, right? Like, people might want some AI spread within the organization, but they're not even modernized yet. So they're really not AI ready at that point. And I can only imagine from a physical world sense, when you have all of these sensors, there's so many aspects of even connectivity that they're probably not ready for, you know? So let me hit you with this. So let's go for reactive versus proactive security. So could you explain how building security measures have shifted from reactive approaches to more predictive and proactive solutions, and what part AI plays in that shift?
Yeah, I think the traditional security systems, we're talking about, we can talk about kind of the entry, we can talk about key cards and permissions and credentials, we can talk about incident response. There's various aspects of traditional security that have become more automated. And where we are with AI, we can kind of hit that at the end. But traditional security is really driven by manpower, right? We've got a system, we've got devices, and we've got a person or persons that enter in security details. So somebody, should they be there? Should they not be there? And then you offboard them. Should they not be there? It usually happens very reactively, if it happens at all, right? And I think the biggest part of security that we have from a risk perspective is the physical manifestations of, of human timing, human error, human, you know, it, people people not doing their job the right way. So what I mean by that is, let's say in a firm, an employee leaves the company, or in a multi-tenanted building, the flow of a traditional building is that the manager who has let this person go emails HR emails the office manager or the front desk or whoever's communicating to the building. The building, you send it to the property manager sends it to building security, and you hope that flow is as quick as possible. And that flow may never actually happen, right?
Right.
And so now you've got a person that has access to a space that they shouldn't have access to, and you really hope that they're not disgruntled, right? And in the world that we live in today, that is a very terrifying flow. Now let's take that same flow where you're onboarded. This new person comes in, they get a plastic key card, they've got to go visit the security office, take a beautiful picture of themselves, and that key card, they can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and copy that key card and make 50 copies, and that security system is going to recognize that key card as one key card. Not many, one. And so when I talk to folks about the risks of traditional security systems, I think that, we've got a reliance on humans doing the right thing. That's where I'm a big believer that everyone makes errors, right? Everyone makes mistakes, computers or humans. I think computers make less than humans do. And I think that there are people that if we have both, right, going at the same time, humans and computers, you're in a much better position. And add in AI, you have a lot more processing power, the ability to find errors faster, the ability to crunch numbers, the ability to predict what may or may not happen is so much more powerful when you leverage AI. So, thinking about what proactive, so that's kind of your reactive traditional environment. When you think about that proactive aspect, the first step is to more so automate that flow, any of those flows. And there's 50 use cases, plus in that flow that I described, but those are pretty simple ones that most people can understand. Now, if you can automate when somebody comes out of an HR system and either through SSO or Active Directory or any sort of integration that comes from the HR system straight into the security system and automate the onboarding and offboarding, that's a proactive response, right? That's a proactive workflow that takes away that human error aspect, because guess where the employee is offboarded or onboarded first? It is in the HR system. So why aren't those two systems connected? They should be, and they can be. And that's what people need to consider is, why are you putting a human intervention in the middle of that process, hoping that it's going to be properly mandated, properly, I guess, operated, not mandated, operated. So I think, when you think about the proactive nature of security, that's one flow. And then there's other proactive flows that you can have, which is connecting security cameras to having triggering events, not just having old school CCTVs that you could go, ask your low voltage guy to come and pull down the video feed so that you can see it on a 9x9 screen and get that video feed, and then be very reactive 2 weeks later when you can actually analyze that video. But those are the things that, when you think about how far we've come from technology and how not far some people think about security, especially, it's mind blowing, in my opinion. Like, it's so mind blowing that you wouldn't make the investment. That one incidence of, most cyber threats happen from a physical breach. And if you think about the cost of that and the cost of upgrading the system to an automated flow, add AI in. Like, I think AI is so, so powerful. But even getting to automated is something that we need to absolutely do. And if we think about like what's happening in security, we're in a shift of going from physical to digital. And that shift is so, people are very scared of that shift. I hear often, like, what if somebody loses their phone? I'm like, well, what if somebody loses their key card? Like, and
Your
nobody
day
loses their
is
phone.
done. Okay. If you
Right.
lost your phone, just pack it in.
Exactly.
Like, your
I
day's
had
done.
somebody ask me, a prospect asked me, well, what if somebody jumps in a pool and their phone stops working? And I just said, that sounds like their problem. Sure. Right. Like, everything stops working, but why is that your problem that they've done that? They could have been, how many times? I think the average time that somebody keeps a physical key card is 2.5 years. 2.5 years, and you're trying to keep a security system in place for 10 plus. Anyway, I can go on about, I think, how the industry is more skewed towards reactive, but I'm super excited about where we're going from, getting to proactive so that we can actually then introduce AI solutions. You can't get there being reactive first.
Yeah, I really like this topic because I don't know why I keep going back to talking about being a seller, but there's a lot that I can relate to in this conversation. And it is not a surprise to me that customers don't have identity access management solutions already set up. That was frequent. And what happens, I can't expect them to know, but I do expect their integrator to know. And their integrator is usually the first company that they're connected with, or even the seller that represents the manufacturer. And so the seller might, with, let's call it not physical security first, but IT security first, and managing identities, because ultimately that's what access control does. It's just a bunch of identities moving around in a building somewhere. And so there's that. There's also the aspect that the security industry has not made it easy to integrate with these systems. And so, like, custom API schemas get written. Customers don't always use Okta or Azure Active Directory. They probably use something else, or they just don't do it. And it ends up becoming a project. And I know, coming from Honeywell, what it's like when you have to submit something through and you're already jaded because you know how long it's going to take, how many meetings it's going to transpire, and it looks like work. And so I think that I see it incumbent upon the industry people to make that process easy, and I think that they are, especially with cloud-based solutions, that they're enabling customers to make this connectivity of that workflow much easier. So there's that. And there's another thing that I thought about when you were talking about this, that I might go off the deep end, and deep, no pun intended, but DeepSeek. So I was on a podcast recently, and they were asking me what I thought about the DeepSeek R1 reasoning model stuff. Like, was that a real innovation? And it's my belief that it absolutely was. But the basis of that, other than something called mixture of experts, which is how it was able to work so well, I don't need to go into what that is, but to talk about a more simple version of what they did that I think highlights what you're saying. So what they did is they use reinforcement learning to make the AI learn or do self-improvement, but it did it off of verifiable information, right? So, example, I can verify that 2 + 2 is 4, but I can't verify, maybe a socioeconomic issue that is like complicated. But if it's an input that says, if it's almost like Boolean logic level, then and if it's repeatable, then AI should be able to do that. And so, to your point, trying to remove bottlenecks is not to remove people from the equation and make them fearful for their job. They should think that to themselves, that, hey, the technology is able to do this. Can I see that this can be automated in some way? And if that's the case, I'm actually helping elevate safety and security by removing myself, because I'm not always available. And I can't begin to think that at scale, especially across portfolios in multifamily. I know when they have regional management or they have on-site property management, but if there's, especially if it's 300 plus unit properties, There's a lot of stuff going on every day. And the property manager is the jack of all trades, or, the Susie of all trades. And they don't have time to look at everything and anything. And so
Right.
I do find it's like, there's an aspect where, one, it's incumbent on the industry. And there's another aspect to say, like, hey, if it's a verifiable thing that is almost like a, if then this statement, it should be something that we can push into these systems for the betterment of the customer and really ourselves. Because to your point, like, people are going to miss these notifications of approval.
Right.
And there's no need to include people in that. I think, and rather upskill them or reskill them into something else that's more valuable.
Well, you still need people to, you can automate this system, the workflow, right? But what you can't automate is the response. If somebody is in need
Yes.
of something, or if there is an actual incident physically,
Right.
right? A computer can't respond to that. So to your point, like reskilling them, repositioning them into a role that, removes the manual aspect of some of these that can be removed is, I think, imperative.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So let's go into your realm more specifically. Let's talk
Yeah.
about real estate companies and AI. And I shared with you in the past that I've got some experience in working with real estate firms, and it's one of the best verticals in the industry, if I'm being honest, especially with the boom of MDU properties and just a massive asset class that it is. So in regards to real estate companies and AI, in the realm where AI intersects with physical security, what responsibilities do real estate companies bear to ensure safe, efficient, and compliant building operations?
I think it goes back to, you said, security is about identities moving around in spaces, but you take it one step further. It's, are they the permissioned? Are they allowed to be in those spaces that
Hmm.
should be there? A commercial real estate building have a lot of loiterers, right? Often, right? People hang out in the lobbies. They will be there. You unfortunately have visitor management systems that are built out with both identifying VIPs as well as people who shouldn't be there, right? That are not allowed to be there. That could be security threats to the people inside the building, or staff inside the building. And so when I think about the real estate, like real estate companies' responsibility, it's both the landlord and the property manager that are responsible for the safety of the people, the occupants of that building. And so they've got to work with both physical security, privacy, even how physical security then manifests to cybersecurity. That's one thing that, I think I read a report that it's like 4 million each cybersecurity event on average costs a company $4 million. And some higher percentage of that is from a physical breach, right? The access to those systems is from a physical breach. And so when I think about real estate, right, companies reside in real estate. So real estate is just a broad term of, you know, it's spaces in which people do activities, right? Business, live, shop, whatever that activity
Hmm.
might be, e-commerce, take your pick. But you've got to ensure that that environment is safe, both physically and digitally, for those occupants. And so what we need to see is it's not a singular motion. Access and security is in every single motion that happens inside that building. It's in the motion of an HVAC system operating, right? Who should actually have access to that system, and who should be able to command and control it? Does it just have to be one person? Does that mean then there's no redundancy? Does it have to be, should some of that access be decentralized in a way so people can manage their own comfort levels? And in that instance, who should be available, or who should be allowed to do that? And so security in my mind is not just that physical key card, it's the access to do things in spaces. And that is really the responsibility of a real estate company. So real estate, like let's just say a landlord and property management, has a responsibility to make sure up until that door of that tenant, they're responsible for ensuring all of what I just talked about is implemented, right?
Hmm.
And then it's on the responsibility of the tenant to make sure that once, crossing that threshold of their door, everything in their environment is safe and secure for their stakeholders in their space. And so it's not, I'm being vague and generic and on purpose, only because it's not just about key cards. Security follows you in every single which way. And then it's, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, people didn't even know who was in their spaces. And they still don't. I would say, like, less than 25% of people actually know who's in their spaces. how many people, who, why are people in your spaces? If you're the operator, whether it's in that tenant space or in the building space, if your responsibility is to ensure the safety of everyone there in a safe environment, how do you not know the basic information of who's there?
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. But we have companies like you, right, with Cohesion that's able to bridge that gap. And so
That's
what I'd
exactly right.
love to talk about is like one of my favorite topics that relates to generative AI. And one of the reasons that we got connected through was because your company has built agents within your platform. And there's not many that are doing that. And I think that's super innovative. I got to give you credit for that. I think that the few companies that have been doing that, they can see that this is the real way to apply AI in an operational sense that is more than just kind of like, how can I say, something that actually it's AI that does stuff, right? And I think that's a big difference as opposed to, something that might shorten information for the person to evaluate, might pick up a camera. I don't know, pick up a camera could pick up like a person or a vehicle, okay, great. We're talking about AI that goes and does things for people. And so on this next section, we're going to talk about the power of connected data, which you're definitely very, very familiar with, as we've learned so far in this podcast, and generative AI. So let's start off with talking about breaking down data silos. I know it's a tough one. I've certainly seen that in companies. So, how does connecting financial and operational data, you're coming from the finance, real estate finance, and operational data, rather than keeping them in a separate silo, enhance capabilities and efficiency of smart buildings?
Yeah, there's data that comes out of every single system, right? Whether
Hmm.
that's the building systems, sensors, people systems, workflows, just day to day workflows, all of those have data coming out of it. We have never really seen those data sets being combined in any single way. And so when you look at a data set in a singular kind of, realm, you can only do so much with that data. And what I mean by that is, the age old kind of complaint of bad swipe data is, and it sucks, right? Bad swipe data doesn't suck, actually. It's great data,
Hmm.
but it's what you do with that data. What decision are you trying to make with that data? You're right. Bad swipe data does not say how long people dwell, but that's because when you set up the system, you didn't have a tap out, right? And there's always going to be some margin of error for the people that, what's it called, tailgating, right? People are going to tailgate. That's like 3 to 5% error margin. You can still make decisions without it being perfect, right? For those human level variances.
I feel like we
So,
should change the name of
yeah.
tailgating, by the way, because it sounds like it's too much fun. Like we should give it like a negative connotation. I'll think about that later. But tailgating just sounds like a good time. It's like, yeah,
I
tailgating. And
agree.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. Who was playing? Sorry, go ahead.
Partying.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I agree with you, actually. And I don't think it's that big of a deal, right?
Hmm.
Again, if you come back to the responsibility of people should be that the operation, the flow of what you set up is protecting that people should or shouldn't be there, right? If tailgating means that somebody just didn't want to swipe their badge, but they're meant to be there, and that's a 3% variance, you're not talking about something that's going to end the world, right? On that front. But that said, like when we think about, the type of data, like the various data sets, you've got to go from that like looking at bad swipes. That in and of itself is helpful only to understand how many people are in the space, right? But you
I
don't
could see.
know if that's how many people are in the space because most spaces don't have that exit requirement to understand. So now you've got to circulate that and triangulate that with sensors because sensors show how many people are in the space, but not who's in the space. That's where bad swipe data comes in, right? So you've got two different data sets that have different data, different, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Different classifications and how they even report on it. Those things that are coming out of the systems can't be married up to one another to
Hmm.
be able to triangulate. So now you've got to actually do some work to clean and structure and normalize that data so you can actually triangulate that. Now let's add in this complexity of how people are using that space. So now you've got the numbers, like you've got who's coming into the space, you've got how many people are dwelling in that space in real time. You want to understand what spaces they're using. And then you want to ask the question of, is that is that enough space, right? Is my space rationalized? That is something that takes multiple data sets, right? That need to be in constant flow. So you need to have pipelines built that need to actually create the ability to do the analysis. When you get data, and again, when you get data to this level that it's so, when you're talking about, massive real estate portfolio, let's just say a company has 1,000, 5,000 locations. In order to do that, an analyst can't do that, right? So that's where you start to get AI to come in. And the first step is just to analyze, like, how do I leverage this data? What am I inferring from this data? What kind of, what are some of the anomalies from this data? Where should I pay attention? Where should I not pay attention? And then you take it the next step, which is generate and predict and tell me what I need to have. What is rational? What should I do? What if I have all these input changes? What if my business grows by X% going forward? How much more space do I need? How many, what type of people, given the makeup of my company right now in terms of departments, help me predict the type of spaces that I need. Now, that is something that, again, now you need HR data. Now you need, your locational data. You need your stacking plans. You need your desk planning. You need your conference room plans. That's a lot of data that people can't do. And that's where AI is so powerful. And we have yet to see it be used in its full capacity right now. That's what excites me. Like, that stuff is powerful. And you're not eliminating, you might eliminate a business analyst or two here or there, but you're not eliminating the decision makers, right? You're not eliminating the people that have to say, okay, what do I do with that? Right. So that, I don't know if I answered your question, but went off on a tangent.
You absolutely crushed. Okay. So for the audience, random through is awesome. And if you don't think that, then just go away. Okay. You are. And I think that you have a very concise, precise way to explain it. And that's coming from your background and knowing the industry that you serve, knowing the problem that you solve. And so I love it. So let's talk about Savvy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about Savvy.
Developing Savvy. When building the Savvy platform, how did Cohesion integrate AI to create a holistic real estate data analytics solution?
I'll take back from what I just kind of alluded to, right? In terms of creating those pipelines, structuring that data. We started out, so Savvy, our evolution of the company started out with true integrations that were all about, command and control. So we didn't just do an integration to pull data out of a system, right? That's part of kind of, where Savvy comes in. What we did was we built a workflow tool, an experience tool that makes us integrate those systems. Data flows to and from those systems so that there's bidirectional syncing going on with our systems, with the data. We understand how those systems need to always be up to date, right? We get certified by underlying integrations. We maintain the different, when a new API comes out or a new standard comes out, we have to maintain that. And so we've become integration specialists. And that is what you first and foremost need. You can't, when I see, our biggest competition right now is people self-building their own, trying to self-build their own stuff, right, internally. The problem with that is that you don't actually understand the systems that they come out of. And so you might be able to, in point in time, build something, but in 3 months and 5 months and 6 months, that may break because that integration needs to be maintained. And so we started with this whole experience workflow application, right? That allowed us to understand the complexities of building system integration and even software integrations. And we learned how to normalize and structure that data, all within the realm of commanding and controlling and taking action. So as we started to go down our evolution as a company, we realized that a lot of the things that people were asking for was great. We now have this amenity that allows us to operate stuff, right? Do stuff. Now we need the ability to understand and make decisions off of these things, right? From a management perspective. How do we understand how those spaces can either be made more efficient by investments that I make, right? Capital investments, changing up how buildings are set up or the amenities that I create within it. There's so many different decisions. Or when I have to replace my chiller because my chiller needs replacement, how do I get the data to baseline the before and after? All of that stuff, we understood, and we started seeing all these use cases being presented by our clients. Everything from, is the feed of water from a district cooling plant the right temperature? Are they doing it at the right temperature? Does that make me, is my energy spend, my increase in energy spend from the fact that this district cooling center isn't giving us the right temperature of water? That's the use case that we're seeing. So all sorts of use cases. We've got obviously the traditional ones of space utilization and, occupancy and how people are using spaces. But then you layer on all these variables of, water, energy, resources, utilities, lighting, and then you've got how training of people. You've got to think about how how to pull all of that together. So we did that. And that's where we brought Savvy in. Savvy was the tool to now have that push of data come in. So now we're coming in that one-way feed, right, of data. We're structuring it and we're normalizing it, and we're making it so that those data sets can be compared, right? That's what Savvy does. It compares and contextualizes data sets. So what I mean by that is you're not just looking at, here's my static energy use, or here's my static badge swipes. You're looking at it as, here is my energy use per in-office using occupant. Now, how many people are, and that's looking at energy, and that's looking at badge swipe data and sensors and triangulating that data to truly contextualize, what is my energy use, not spend, which you can also pull in from the financial system, right? Or bills, that's a spend per person using the office. Without that, you're doing static analysis. And so with the ability to contextualize that in-office using, or per square foot, or per climate region, right? Different energy use in Chicago versus Arizona. You need to see and make those decisions. What we've always done in real estate, and I can attest to this, is what was my trend and how have I grown? Like, what's my variance up and down from the year before over the last 5 years from a trend of financials, not from a trend of understanding the true operation behind it. We've got so many things that are variables, right? We've got tariffs, we've got rates, we've got, utility rates, you've got people, you've got system health, you've got system age, you've got, all of these things need to be combined. And that's what Savvy is set out to do. So the complexity there is that, you're getting different data sets all the time. So as you create more and more, you're training the model. I often get the question, I'm sure you do too, that, how can you trust AI? And it's like, well, how do you trust your analysts, right? Like, you train both of them and you hope for the best, but you train it and you train it and you train it and you make it stronger and you make it better so that you can trust it. And I would argue that you can trust AI more than you can trust the analysts out of the box.
Yeah, I had season 1 where we had someone on. They asked a really profound question to me, and I answered it without hesitation or equivocation. It was literally asking about the same thing, like, which one would you trust more? And I think most people's first gut reaction, until they actually get a scenario-based question, is the human. But they asked me something where they said, like, hey, let's say that you were in a jail cell, or if you were like in a room and there was a camera watching you. Would you rather have AI watching you, or would you have a human watching you? Because the AI is looking for specific things. It exists for a specific reason, right? A lot of people think about AI as like this omniscient being. It really is just a task force, right? So it's just tools that are, or in this case, agents that are tasked to do something specific. And there might be a mixture of those agents or experts in order to solve for whatever problem that it's set out to do, as opposed to a person. We've seen those examples, right, where you've had the install technician that basically kept the password for the security system or the surveillance system, and now it's watching people's cameras in their house. There's obviously mechanisms that can get put in place to help resolve that specific issue. But I think the point is that people are driven by things that are not logical or necessarily predictable. We see that all the time. And, I think the age old of issue of, or it seems like that now, of even school shootings or something like that. Like, how do you prepare for that? We can mitigate with all the technology, but someone that doesn't have a history one day can just change, and now we have to adjust, right? And so, yeah, I think I think until we get to the omniscient piece, I definitely feel like for task oriented things, when there's a specific role, that AI seems to be the most trusted source.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about instant insights for real estate pros. And what are the main advantages of using Savvy for real estate professionals who need a on-demand insights and analytics?
Yeah, so I guess maybe what I'll start with is Savvy is two things. It's both the business intelligence analytics tool that contextualizes different data sources, and it can combine, from my previous kind of comments, it can combine multiple things so that your analysis is so much stronger and contextualized, and that you can make decisions off of it. The analysis side of it, while very powerful, right? What people want is, what do I do with that? How do I make that decision? And that's where AI comes in. It comes in to tell you, here's where you got to look, here's a suggestion of what you need to do. And so that's the chat engine, right? It's essentially your virtual data analyst. You can ask it questions on the go, which a lot of real estate leaders are so overwhelmed with the questions that they're getting. This wasn't their job 15 years ago, right? It was about lease negotiation and making sure that they understood what their portfolio was. Now it's, you have workplace experience, you've got to analyze a cost, you've got to look at the true cost of occupancy of every single one of your spaces, while then answering all of the C-suite's questions, because everyone cares about real estate. Post COVID, everyone is into, do I keep space? Do I get rid of space? Do I keep space? Do I get rid of space? So the questions that are happening, you've got to be on top of it. You can't wait for that analysis to come to you. You want to be able to talk to an agent, a chat, a virtual, analyst. And that's what Savvy AI is all about, right? Savvy BI is about gathering all that data, but Savvy AI is powered by that BI tool that essentially centralizes and aggregates that data. So the AI tool is, you can ask it, what was my occupancy? What was the occupancy in my offices by by finance across the company? Where are they, aggregating most towards, like, what offices are big? Should I centralize my finance operations or shared services in that location? Where, how much I mandated a 3-day return to office. Are people actually complying? To get that answer, right? How many different places would somebody have to go to be able to get that answer? And is it going to even be accurate? Because you're going to be fraught with human emotion that comes into that answer. It is not going to be data driven when you get that answer, when you go around and ask that question, right? Because you've got managers who don't want to admit that their people aren't coming in because they're scared to lose that, lose. I think where Savvy comes in, it's kind of two-part, right? You've got the analytics side, and then you've got the no bullshit answering engine. That's what I'll call it.
And then we could also have another one that's a therapist. So that way,
Yes.
one-on-ones, all the therapy that happens during management employee one-on-ones, the AI can just deal with.
Oh, I would love that. Can you build
So
that?
what's that?
Can you build that?
I
I'll
can
take it.
actually,
Okay, great.
yeah, and I can make the voice whatever you want.
Maybe you should build in therapists, right? The agent therapist. I think that could go pretty far.
There was, yeah, and it would do stuff for you, like be like, oh, are you feeling sad? I'm gonna go order you like a pizza and
Yeah.
order you chocolate, because it makes you feel better. Oh, let me automatically turn on Netflix, and then just start playing slow music.
Let me actually give
Yeah.
you, because you just
Yeah.
you jogged my memory that I didn't fully answer the take action part, right? That AI can do
Yes.
for you.
Yeah.
So
Big part.
let me
Yeah.
answer that really quick. I had a couple kind of clients come to me and talk about this idea about audit challenges with coming back to security, right? If we think about, they've got this mandate to audit if they're across their portfolio, if the people that have credentials are supposed to have credentials. And so we talked through that entire workflow, and we talked about how, in order to ensure that that's the case, right? You've got to compare it to your HR database, right? Are those the right people that should be credentialed at all? And then you have to audit, are they supposed to be in the spaces that they're credentialed for, right? Are they permissioned to be in those spaces? The next step is, how do I then make sure that there's something that's automated that can actually go out and take those people out, so it's not a static analysis that then has to be done manually? How do we automate that entire flow? And that has both workflows and rules engines and AI all built into that workflow that you can audit, you can evaluate, and then you can go and clean up. And you can make sure that in real time, proactively, not reactively, everything is cleaned up and everything is safe and secure. And that is what your role as a real estate leader is supposed to be.
I appreciate you bringing that back to circle because actions are probably the most important attribute of an agent. For AI that just goes and does stuff for you. Otherwise, it just turns into another higher valuable chat bot, right?
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, when we make this stuff, the idea is that it can just make us more efficient. And what better way to make us more efficient by it acting on our behalf? You said something earlier I thought was super interesting. Just before this, I want to come back to. And I don't know if I'm thinking about the right way, so just bear with me, and then I'd love to get your opinion. So I think for a business, and you know this all too well, being a CEO and founder, that throughout the year to hit your goals, you have to pivot and you have to be adaptable and adjust on some things, right? When I think of a real estate property for real estate pros, I wonder how that goes throughout the year, right? We're saying like, hey, if we're at 100% occupancy, we're doing really, really good. Or if we're maintaining our tenants for whatever long period of time, that's a positive metric, we're doing really, really good. But how do these systems begin to impact that? And like you were saying, can I speak to or work with these agents, maybe it's Savvy, to help them pivot through the year, right? Because the way I look at a real estate property is, I mean, it's there. The property's not changing. So maybe they buy something throughout the year that enhances the tenant experience. Maybe it helps with retention of tenants. Maybe it attracts new ones. But they have all this data where it's working. It can either work for them if they have access to it or using a tool like Savvy, or work against them because they don't have access to it or a tool like Savvy. And so I'm kind of curious on your perspective as a real estate professional, as a CEO and founder of this technology, how does Savvy help these customers pivot and be adaptable through the year so that way they're hitting their goals? And this is coming out of pure ignorance, by the way. I'm not sure what real estate goals are other than maybe occupancy rates, but I feel like they're a business too, just like every other business, right?
Yeah, I think it exposes, the simplicity of it is it exposes different variables that they should consider. And it's not manual anymore. There's reporting capabilities and the ability to say here and make suggestions as to how you're supposed to change it, right? That's where AI can be super powerful. It could tell you like maybe consider cutting costs here, maybe that. And oftentimes when I talk to real estate leaders, or even when I was in it, right, we looked at the same variables, right, which was labor, energy, utilities, and there's a whole bunch of fixed costs, right? So you start to squeeze on small things where like software. Software is one that real estate is traditionally not like to spend money on. Software is way cheaper than headcount, I will say, and it's so powerful when you can get the right tools. And I caveat the right tools because there is a lot of vaporware out there, stuff that doesn't work, stuff that doesn't know how to integrate. And so
Especially if they can take it and wrap it into like a technology package for their tenants.
Exactly.
They can't do that with their people. By the way, like we just got an assistant property manager. We're gonna charge all of you 10 more bucks a month. Like no, like I don't care. She can just go away. I'll pick up my own packages or something.
Right. It's the way that real estate has been run has not been innovated for a very long time. But I am seeing a lot of innovation, like the way people are thinking about their buildings, the way that they're thinking about really taking into consideration human emotion and human experience. That was never done, right? To your point earlier, there was a building, it was built, some were sexy, some were not, and they achieved different goals of who they attracted into the buildings. But in a world where you've got choices, right? The biggest thing is people have choice of where they go. Real estate leaders are being forced into looking at all the variables and looking and considering, like, it's not just about, let me go on a soapbox. People are like, oh, I've got to make sure that I have like a flight simulator as my amenity, and that's going to attract people. You know what I want simply, like for my employees? I want a clean bathroom that gets janitorial services on time. I want clean indoor air quality so my people aren't falling asleep at 2 p.m. midday because the CO2 levels are too high, right? You're not talking
Yeah, I
about
feel like
that.
I gotta check my HVAC system at home. Like, why am I
Yeah.
falling asleep at 2 p.m. every day?
That could be food and air quality. And home air quality is way worse than commercial building air quality. So for those that feel like they're tired and burned out by the end of the day from work from home, commercial buildings are kind of better for that. Just small tidbit. I'm a big return to office. I just got to put it out there, but I'm also big on flexibility. I think the flexibility aspect is what is most important. And that flexibility is also the reason that real estate leaders need to be agile. Let's just take in an engineering term, right? They've got to pivot. It's not what you did yesterday or what you did even an hour ago is not going to be the case. And so when we think about even, who you hire, it's similar to startups. I need people that can context switch constantly, right? That if they want a job that's doing the same thing that's predictable, that's not really what a startup is about. And I think it's the same thing with where the real estate, world is today. It's very much changing on an hour to hour, day to day basis, overall.
That's awesome. Well, hey, so the discussion's been so fruitful. We were able to skip over 2 sections on the agenda, and we're going to go right towards the end. Okay. And we're going to save this section called future trends and consideration, right? So we've talked a lot of present tense, what you're working on, what your customers are asking about, a lot of the practicality that you're seeing. And I'd love to talk about the future here, because this is an AI podcast and we talk about anything related of such. And so there's a few points that I'd like to discuss with you. So first is emerging technology in smart buildings. So which new trends do you anticipate will have the biggest impact on AI integration in the next generation of smart buildings?
I think it's the connectivity of the various systems so that you're now understanding that these systems in and of itself are not siloed and the operation bringing it together, whether that's, like I said, security, energy, people, parking and transportation, all of them are a single system, right? They're parts of a single system and they've been operated as separate systems. And that is going to change because the labor force is going to change. We've got building engineering, building engineers, workforce. We've got a workforce problem on the building engineering side. So we're seeing the digitalization of buildings and the ability for AI to be able to go across those systems and be able to not just, analyze it, but very quickly process that data. I think like one sensor for indoor air quality can give off like millions of data points in one day. Nobody can humanly analyze that. So you have to command back to those, to the base systems to be able to make those commands and control those systems. So the ability for AI to analyze, to predict, to take in external data like, hey, a weather pattern is coming in. I know instead of like somebody saying, oh my God, it's going to be minus 20 degrees in Chicago, let's just heat the shit out of these buildings. Like that's not that's not efficient. Two, you should also understand that if there's a massive storm coming in, most people aren't coming to the office. So you don't actually have to do that. So let's start to put in predictive behaviors into that so that it goes across all the buildings. And I think that we take out 20 to 30% of costs by allowing for that to happen. But there's a major shift that has to happen culturally for people to start trusting and spending the dollars up front to get the training into buildings. And that's super exciting to me.
How do we cross the chasm there, right? So how do we cross the chasm culturally? How do we get it? How do we get across?
Again, I think it's starting small. I think it's a few people that are going to raise their hand to be the leaders in the space, and it's case studies and use case examples. And it's really, it's the mandates of money drives every conversation. So investment managers need to start requesting that. Don't just take, P&L, P&L predictions like when you are doing an investment, look at your thesis, really review your thesis. So I think it's going to come not necessarily from the ground operations. I think it's going to come from the finance side. But again, I come from that side and I know the power that sits behind it. When the money talks, it's where people go. But I do think with investments like this, we're going to see a massive amount of costs cut out of there. And we'll maybe start to see parity across different cities from cost perspective.
Do you see out of curiosity, when we think about, I'm going to talk about MDU because that's what I know with mostly around real estate. I know real estate branches out to commercial, CRE, and other things. But for far as I'm concerned, you got these A class, B class, C class properties. A class being like your 300 plus unit, high rise, mixed use property. Those kinds of customers, are you seeing that they have crossed the chasm? Do you think it's more a smaller portfolio that hasn't crossed the chasm yet? Like, where are you seeing the trends happening with the ones that are most forward thinking?
I think a lot of, I think it's the like it's still A class buildings and it's developers that are really crossing the chasm right now. I've worked with some of my clients are just they're really forward thinking. Like that use case of looking at that chilled water came from one of my clients. Like they are really thinking about, and it's a developer, and they're thinking about things in a much different way. I definitely think it's going to be the A because the B and the C classes are fighting for dollars, but I do think that they would get a lot of benefit if they considered AI tools or even automation tools, right? So if we aren't ready for full AI, start with those automation tools because costs can be cut out of the equation and you can become more efficient. But it's A right now.
Gotcha. All right. Two last questions. We'll wrap up. Last one here, the second to last. Cohesion's forward strategy, right? So, how is Cohesion preparing to tackle both the challenges and opportunities these emerging trends present?
We have never been a company that is plug and play and just grow, grow, grow at the cost of our customers. We've always partnered with our customers through this journey. And so part of this, there's complexities when you get into connected buildings overall, right? Because as you mentioned in your kind of opening, right, system integrators and the way that buildings are set up can be very custom. And so we need to take buildings out of that custom flow. We need to understand that AI can also help us understand and start to get us out of coding for that
Hmm.
singular building, right? Making sure that those custom flows can be recognized. So for us, we partner with our customers to take them through the journey. The more that we can partner with, right, and take them through that journey, the more buildings that we get to cross that chasm. And the more buildings that we get, there's every building is different. There's not one single building that is built with the same systems, the same people flows. And I say systems not just as equipment, right? And devices. I'm talking about the people that are within it. And so every single building environment is unique. And so understanding that unique nature is where we want to be able to break down the silos of that uniqueness so that buildings can be predictive, can be the most efficient that they are, and they can be positive contributors to the community as a whole. I got into real estate because I am a huge believer that space brings people together and it plays a vital role in our world. And it's something that I can touch and feel and see and understand. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools for a community.
That's awesome. So, let's talk right directly to our real estate pros. So, what key recommendations would you offer to real estate companies interested in adopting AI powered solutions for their smart buildings?
Understand your goals. Don't take no from IT. All of these tools, again, depending on the vendor, you can trust and you can make a lot of progress. So ask the hard questions. Ask why some people are doing it and you can't, because you can. And I think that there's a lot of tooling that you can actually get to the forefront of and position your assets to perform the way that you want it to. So, bottom line, don't be scared and be aggressive.
Awesome. And call through and team because they're going to hook you
Thank
up
you.
with some AI agents inside of your real estate technology. So, Drew, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I know we worked really hard to get here, and I think you're a great conversationalist, and I hope the audience enjoys, and I know they will, enjoys you as much as I have. But thanks for the time, and until next time.
Thanks, Dan, for having me. This was fun.
Drop.